Hello and welcome back to our coding adventures. Today we're going to talk about what we're going to be doing for the next 3 days. So 1 day for setup, and there's going to be 2 days that we are going to do a tournament that everybody will be involved in. And we're going to do the Castle Crasher, actually the dynamic Castle Crasher, which has, I believe, like 9 different setups of these different castles that you have to knock over. So let's talk about how this works. First of all, you've got to knock these things off without yourself going off the edge, because there's no edge. There's a red border. I'm just going to barely demonstrate. Let me just get to one that's easy enough to deal with. Like that one will be fine. So I'll just show you how it works. So I'm just going to set up a simple program to have it drive forward 800, looks like it's 800 millimeters, and then turn 45 degrees, just to show you how these things work. So right now I've just got it set up to drive to the middle, turn 45 degrees, go towards this corner until the down eye detects red, and then we're going to stop. So we'll just see how this goes and see if it knocks any off of the edge. None. Okay, so I wasn't able to knock any off. Your job should be to knock some of these pieces off of the edge. So there's different strategies. You could kind of sweep across, in a kind of lawnmower fashion. You could make it random, where it's doing the vacuum cleaner kind of thing like we did in the reef cleanup. You could have the robot search until it finds something and then drives it off. That's a possibility, but your goal is to knock these things all off of the platform as soon as you can. The tournament will be 3-minute rounds. So in 3 minutes, your job is to get them all off in as soon as you can. So if you get it in 2 minutes, that's great, right? Then you're doing really well. Or at the end of 3 minutes, you count how many pieces are left. So that is going to be our goal. That's going to be our coding goal. Now, there's a lot of different things you could do. We just talked about a few of them. One of my strategies I thought about doing this was to go from the middle outward. The problem is that if you're in the middle and you're searching for something and then you go to it until it goes off of the edge, you don't know what direction you are. You don't know the degrees back to the center. You have to calculate that with some trigonometry that most of you, if you're listening to this, haven't actually dealt with yet, because that's a Math 2 thing. So maybe you've gotten into a little bit, and Pythagorean theorem to learn the distance, which you probably have dealt with a little bit. So I'm going to ask you to model and copy my program. So the good news is that you just get to copy it. The bad news is that it's kind of complicated, so you have to pay attention here. And what I'd like you to do is to start off with setting yourself up with a program. And here's that program that I'd like you to set up. Hopefully you can see this. If not, I have included a picture of this in the assignment so that you can see what this looks like. So go ahead and set that up. Pause this video here, and we will continue in a moment. Now, for the purpose of this, we're going to use, instead of the Dynamic Castle Crasher Playground, which has similar things, I'm going to go to the Art Canvas Playground, where we start in the middle. Now, I'm already starting in the middle. If you use this program later on as part of your coding that you're going to do for the tournament, then you need to modify it, of course, because it's first of all, this is a forever loop, which never is going to go out of the forever loop. So you'll have to modify it a little bit. but I'm going to show you how this works, and this is part of your assignment. So first of all, we're going to base this on quadrants. So quadrant 1 up here is where x and y values will both be positive. Quadrant 2 over here is where your y is positive, but your x is negative. In quadrant 3, they're both negative, and in quadrant 4, x is positive and y is negative. Why does it matter? Because you need to determine what quadrant you're in order to determine the math about how to calculate angles and distances to get back to the middle. So here's a problem. I need to have a right triangle, essentially, that includes either an x or y axis, the point, and the middle, right? So we're going to have that right triangle. But what happens if I'm on either x equals 0 or y equals 0? Then I can't make a triangle to go back to the middle because it's just a line. That proposes a problem. That's why we have this big old if statement and else statement. If at random it accidentally picks that we're going to go at 90 or 180 or 270, which is straight, okay, along an axis, then it can't make a triangle and we're stuck. So what we're going to do first is we're going to say that we can't have it the position x or the position y be at 0. So that's what this first if statement is. We're going to drag over an or statement into that. Okay, now some of these are going to get a little bit long. And then we're going to put in an equals in each one of these. Equals goes in there, and an equals goes in here. And what we're going to do now is say, okay, in sensing, we're going to drag in our position x and our position y. And I realized I forgot one thing. I'm going to get rid of this guy for a minute. Okay. So right now we're saying if the position x is 0, now we could have done this backwards, then we're going to do all of these things, but I want it to do these things if it's not on 0, and if it is on 0, do something else. So I'm actually going to drag this whole thing out here. You have to grab it in the right place. Hopefully we're learning that by now. And I'm going to change this whole thing to a not. If it is not true that position x is 0 or position y is 0, then we're going to find these different right triangles that I'll talk about in just a moment. If it is true that it landed on 0, we need to move the robot a little bit so that it is no longer on 0. So that's where the else is. So now all we're going to do is we're going to drive forward. We don't have to go very far. Actually, we're going to turn first. So we're going to turn, and it doesn't matter how much you turn. If you turn 45 degrees and drive a little bit, you will no longer be on 0. So we're going to turn 45 degrees, and we're going to drive just like 5 millimeters, not very far at all. Just to get off of that axis. Okay, so that's going to get us out of there. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create, what do we do if we're in any one of those quadrants? And they are different. So what we're going to do first is we're going to set up some my blocks. And we're going to set up 4 of them. So we're going to make a block, okay? And we're going to call that block, we're going to call it Q1, as in quadrant 1 return. You can put spaces in a block. Self out here. Okay. And then we're going to do the same thing with make a Q2 return. Okay. And then a Q3 and a Q4. And I've made all 4 of those. If you have to, you can right click and edit that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to set up what happens if it's in quadrant 1. But I'm going to get to that in just a minute. So let's say that we are in quadrant, well, let's go to there. Let's say if we're in quadrant 1. If we're in quadrant 1, then we are going to have an x value that is positive and a y value that is positive. And we already talked about that a little bit, so I think I'm going to just go there. So we need to make sure now, because each one of these if statements is all being checked at the same time, none of these can be true at the same time. If it is, your program will glitch out and just stop, because it's like saying, I want you to be in Winco and in Walmart at exactly 1 o'clock today. You can't do that, right? Those two things cannot be true at the same time. So none of these things can be true at the same time. So we're going to put in our operators, and we're going to put in an and this time, because we want to say, okay, if my position x is positive and my position y is positive. Now, there's a couple different ways of doing that. I think I'm going to set this up first and then duplicate it. That's going to be easier, and then just change my values. So we need an and, we already got that. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in equals into each side. I'm sorry, we're not putting equals, my bad. Let's drag that back out. We need to put greater than and equal than. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. And I am not really going to be able to set this up ahead of time. Well, yeah, we will. So I need a greater than and a greater than for the first one. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to set up so that my position x in millimeters and my position y in millimeters is both greater than 0. Now we did something if it does equal 0, so we can say, okay, if my position x is greater than 0 and my position y is greater than 0, okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to do Q1 return. Now, I haven't set up Q1 return yet. I'm going to do that in just a moment. Now, if you're smart and you know what I'm doing and you figured this one out, you could pause this video or even go faster to set up the rest of yours, because this is going to be quadrant 1. Now we're going to do quadrant 2, so on and so forth. So watch the next one. In the next one, then in quadrant 2, my y value is positive, but my next value, x value is negative. So that's where we're going to go, okay, I still need an and. Okay, and inside of that and, I'm going to now have a greater than and a less than. So I'm going to have a greater than on one side and a less than on the other side. So now we're going to say if my position x in millimeters is, I'm switching sides here because if my position x is less than 0, but my position y is greater than, you got to make sure you're switching your x and y's, got to make sure you're switching to 0. Now I know I'm in quadrant 2 because my y is positive and my x is negative, right? So now I'm going to put that in there, and I'm going to say I need to do Q2 return. And again, you can blast through this if you get it. If not, you follow along. My next one is that they're going to both be negative in quadrant 3. So those are both going to be less thans. I'm going to have my and I'm going to do 2 less thans. Okay, and of course you could flip which side you're doing things on too, but this just makes it, the order helps me think a little bit better. All right, so if my position x is less than 0 and my position y is less than 0, I am going to move to quadrant 3. And finally, if my x is positive but my y is negative, I'm in quadrant 4. bring out and. I'm going to do a greater than and a less than. So in quadrant 4, my x is going to be positive, and my y is going to be negative. Okay. Do a little check. Let's put in the quarter 4 return. All right. So make sure that it's true that the first one is x is greater than 0, y is greater than 0. For Q2, x is less than 0, y is greater than 0. Quadrant 3, they're both less than 0. Quadrant 4, x is greater than 0, y is less than 0. Okay, that is our program, folks. It is, whoops, I'm moving things around. That is not what I wanted to do. Okay, so that is what the whole thing really looks like. Okay. Now, we have to define how to do our returns and what happens. So this is where things get a little bit tricky and a little bit complicated. So the first one I'm going to do is the Q1. Now, Q1 is pretty easy because we're dealing with all positive numbers. So what we're going to do is, in order to do this, though, I have to turn to a certain heading. I want my heading to be facing left because I want to be able to calculate my angle. Now, I could go through all the math in this, but I'm not going to because that's a lesson for another time. I'm just going to show you how it works. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn to heading. Now, I'm going to purposely put this, I'm going to purposely put this kind of out, not attached to anything yet, because I want to duplicate it. So we're going to turn our heading to 180 degrees. I am going to then turn left for, now, here's where we get the math in. And you just are going to follow me, okay? That we are going to put in our operators here, and it's this one that says ABS on it, or also it starts with ABS, and we're going to drag this over here, okay, and then inside of that we're going to put a division. Okay, now we'll be changing this around a little bit. So actually, and we're going to do one more of those. Sorry, I forgot. We're going to put one more of those, and we're going to put all of this inside of that. Okay, so look at what I got. I've got my green oval with a green oval in it with a division in it. Okay, and it's got to be in that order. So make sure that you're doing this. Let's go through that again. So I took two of those, put one inside of the other, and then put the division in the end of that. Okay, so look at the order of operations here. That's going to be important. Now, for this first one, what we're going to do is we're going to do a inverse tangent function, which is a tan. Again, I'm not going to go over what this means because you're going to learn about this stuff when you do trigonometry. So if you haven't already done so, I'm not going to explain how that works. It's just, trust me, this is to find a an angle back to where 0, 0 is. Now, I need the absolute value. Now, in quadrant 1, they're both absolute. But in the other quadrants, there's going to be a negative value, and I can't have a negative value to do these calculations. So absolute value just means it makes it positive. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to take our positions and each side. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. Okay, so on this particular one, we're going to have position X divided by position Y. And again, I'm not going over the math right now, okay? And that is what we're going to turn to. We're turning left to that position. That will head us back towards 0. Now, how far is it to get back towards 0? And that's where our a squared plus b squared plus c equals c squared comes in, Pythagorean theorem. So what we're going to put in here is another one of these things. And this time we're going to use a square root. Now, we have to put in multiple things here because we're going to do it's the square root of a squared plus b squared. So we need to do a little bit of crazy math. There is no squared that I could find in here. So we're going to have to do a multiplier on each side. And we're going to have to do a plus. Now, again, this is complicated. You gotta watch what I'm doing here. So we're going to do 2 multipliers, okay? And in addition, on each side of the addition is going to be a multiplier. Come on, get in there. Okay, so, and then we're going to drag that whole thing into there. Okay, so see what we've got? We've got into the square root of a big thing that's going to include 2 things multiplied plus 2 more things multiplied. And it will do this oval first. It's going to do that as order of operations. Okay, so we're going to do x times x and y times y. So we're going to do position x times position x plus, whoops, where you grab these things, it gets a little difficult every once in a while. And we're going to do times position y and position y. So make sure you're changing, the first 2 say x and the second 2 say y. And again, you want to make sure it's following this order. And that is how far we're going to go. So we're going to drive forward for this big stuff. All right. All right. So that is going to be what our first one looks like. Now the rest is going to actually be pretty easy because we're going to just manipulate this. Okay. So what we have to do is we're just going to change our headings and which way our headings go. So I'm going to just duplicate this. I'm going to kind of, if you do this with me, sort of move these around so that they're next to each other so we know what we're doing here. I'm going to duplicate these 3, kind of move them next to my Q2, duplicate it again. There's going to be my 3, and duplicate it again to be next to my 4, and I'll connect them in just a minute. So I've already got my 1, so I'll go ahead and put that there. Now for Q2, we're going to turn our heading to 0 degrees. We're going to be facing straight up, okay? And I'm looking at my old x, x, y, y, and that's going to be basically the same thing. It's just based on where the heading is. For our Q3, we're going to, I'm sorry, for Q2, we're still at 180. My bad. Okay, so Q1 is 180, Q2 is 180. So actually, I think we could have made those both the same. I'm going to look at it again and make sure I didn't make any mistakes, and we'll test it. And then Q3 and Q4 are both going to be 0 degrees. So after looking at this, I think I might have been able to do just 2 blocks called Q1/Q2, okay? But I didn't do it that way. Although I need to make sure x divided by y, x divided by y, x divided by y. Oh, I think I know what I needed to do that's a little bit different. Oh, no. I think I got it. So let's test this to see if this works. And I know you can't see that, but we're going to go ahead and do it. So it should just kind of go, should turn around. Oh, okay. I didn't do this. I think I know what happened, which I'll explain. Let me try this again. Okay. I know what happened, and I will fix this, and you will fix it right now. So we got 3 things left to do that I'm going to fix. So I've got my mask on because I'm actually doing this during period 5s. First thing is I think I'm having issues with positives and negatives. So up here in quadrant 1 we got all absolute values and it's fine. When we got to 2, we need the absolute value of position X. So I think this is where I'm having a problem. Is this one is okay. What I'm going to do is instead of doing my absolute value of this divided by that, I am going to instead do the position X absolute value divided by the position Y absolute. So watch what we're doing carefully here. I'll zoom in a little bit. So in quadrant 2, I'm going to drag this whole thing out, and instead I'm going to put my divided by again into here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my absolute value. So watch this. We're going to put these two both in. That into there. So now I have absolute value of one divided by absolute value of another. Follow me? Okay. And that's where I'm going to take the position X and divide it by position Y. Okay. Should be good. Oh, I know what I did wrong before also. So now on this one, I'm going to do that same thing. Now this time, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to steal this one, duplicate it again. Okay, I know it's getting a little complicated, but I'm just replacing things. So now I'm dragging that to how far I'm turning left, and I know what I did before. Now I'm going to drag this out, drag this in, and in quadrant 3, what I needed to do is turn right. That's what I messed up on. Okay, so quadrant 4, I'm going to get rid of that, and I think in quadrant 4 I was supposed to turn, no, I was supposed to turn left. Okay, so take a look at these again to see what we did. Here's quadrant 1. Okay, zoom. Let's close this a little bit. Whoops, geez. So make sure yours matches that for quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. And make sure it matches that for quadrant 3 and quadrant 4, including rights and lefts and the whole bit. All right, now we should be good. There's one last thing to do, so even if it works, don't go away yet. But we should be good. Let's. Now it should turn around and come straight back. There we go. Okay, so we fixed that problem. He's going random. Turns. Oh, that's not good. When we get into quadrant 3 or quadrant 1, I am having a problem. All right, hold on. We're going to fix it. Let me see what I've got a problem with when I go to quadrant 1. Oh, I'm turning left instead of right. I should have turned right. There we go. Quadrant 1 should be turning right. Took me a long time to figure this out, but I finally did. So that's why I'm looking at my original program. Now we should be good. Should always return. All right, now optional for this is to, if you want to, is you can put at the beginning of your program, before the forever loop, is turn on your pin. Move your robot pin down, and then you can always set your robot pin colored or whatever you want, right? And then when you go to play it, it'll draw, and you can kind of see it now. It's drawing the line over the line. If you let this go long enough, it'll make kind of this crazy looking starburst thing. So it's always going to go and return. And again, we're not done yet. So the line thing was optional. This next thing is not optional, which is close this window. And now, to keep honest people honest, what I want you to do is down here at the very, very bottom of this thing, at the bottom of this forever loop, you're going to put in a print down here at the very bottom right here. And you're going to print and put in your name, went home. Exclamation point if you want. Keeping honest people honest. Whoops. And now what I would like you to do is, you don't have to have the playground in here, just get it zoomed in. Oops. Jeez. Don't move things around though. Is get this kind of tightened up and together as much as you can, and you're going to take a screenshot of this, okay? And that's going to be part 1 of the assignment. Part 2 of this assignment, if you want to use this, you may manipulate this as much as you want to, but the second part of your assignment is go to the dynamic castle crasher, and you're going to prepare your code that you're going to do for the next 2 days in this tournament that we're going to run. The tournament will be running multiple rounds, and then the first day we're going to see who's going to compete. I will have prizes for the top contender, and we may try and get it so that whoever wins in period 5 plays whoever wins in period 1 for the ultimate championship. And we're going to figure out how to knock these things off. Now, you're going to be at random which one it is. So you're not going to be able to choose. So whatever program you have has to be able to knock these all off without your robot failing and going off the edge in the least amount of time possible. So again, if you want to modify this program to use it so that you're starting from the center, you may go ahead and do that. If you don't even want to do it that way and you have a better way you think of getting it done, then do it that way. Think about what we did when we were doing when we did the coral reef cleanup. We had one where we set it up where you went and you searched one way for something, then you searched the other way for something, and you decided which one was closer. That might be a possibility. There's lots of different ways of getting this done. And your grade for the following 2 class periods will be your participation in that tournament. So good luck. Hope it works out for you. And we'll see you next time when we actually put this into practice. All right, see you then.